Hi everybody. We are learning about Manitoba, and yesterday I taught you how to draw the Manitoba mitten. So now you have a beautiful outline of the province of Manitoba. Did you put your hand down like that? And then you can see it's a mitten that fits. All right, so we're thinking about Manitoba and how the outline of Manitoba looks like a mitten. That's because Manitoba is a province and it is full of very diverse landscapes in very different places. There's cities, there's towns, there's villages, there's farmland and fields and forests, there's lakes and rivers, and all kinds of different environments. Today I'm going to read you a story called Mary's Atlas. Mary meets Manitoba, and this is about a little girl who has an atlas, which is a book of maps, and she goes exploring. Now this story is make-believe, but the places in the story are real. So as you're listening, see if you can think of the places that she's talking about as she travels around Manitoba. And when we're finished, we're going to be drawing some of those places inside our map so that we can map Manitoba like Mary. Map Manitoba like Mary. Mary meets Manitoba. A lot of alliteration. Here is a real map of Manitoba. Now ours will not look this detailed, but if you notice, it is a map of Manitoba. It has a label, map of Manitoba. It has a compass rose. It has a bunch of places with the word names like Winnipeg, and they put a star for Winnipeg because that's the capital city. There's other places with names like York Factory and Brandon, The Paw and Flin Flon. And then there's water, that's why it's blue, like Lake Winnipeg, and many rivers and smaller lakes. All right, let's read Mary Meets Manitoba. Mary is in trouble. Her brother just discovered the slimy gobs of worms that she put in his shoes. Mary is in her bedroom, frantically searching for her atlas. An ordinary atlas is a collection of maps. This isn't an ordinary atlas. When Mary taps the cover of her atlas 3 times, she can enter any map. She finds her atlas just in time and tap, 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 whips it open, and the province of Manitoba is staring up at her. The atlas fizzles and sizzles, it splutters and splatters, it bubbles and pops, and Mary shrinks smaller and smaller and smaller and tinier and tinier and itzier and bitsier. And in a flurry of sparks and mist, poof, Mary vanishes. The sparks and mist twirl away, and Mary is standing in a large field with her atlas in her hand. A little bison is snacking on the tall grass prairie. Welcome to Manitoba. My name is Boo. A little dribble rolls down his furry chin. Boo is not a very careful eater. My name's Mary. Boo takes another thoughtful mouthful of this delicious green grass and nods towards his shaggy back. Let me show you around. They zip and zoom over southern Manitoba's fields of yellow canola, that's a type of grain that farmers grow, and blue flax. Farmers are hard at work cutting and baling. Their tractors are roaring and rumbling over the huge hay fields. And there's a little bit of a fun fact here. It says, Boo's name comes from Manitoba, one of the possible origins of the name Manitoba. The bison is the provincial animal and one of the symbols on the province's shield, flag, and coat of arms. So a bison is a very important part of Manitoba's history. We learned about that earlier in the year when we were talking about the fur trade. First, I'll introduce you to the Golden Boy, says Boo. He stands on top of Manitoba's legislature building in Winnipeg. He's a super nice guy. But The super nice golden boy is super duper upset. The golden boy sniffs. Oh, that tricky north wind stole my torch. If I don't get it back, I can't watch over Manitoba at night. We'll find that north wind, declares Mary. Now we know that if you've been studying Winnipeg, the golden boy is on a building in Winnipeg called the Legislature Building. The legislature is where some of the bosses of Manitoba work. And at the top is the golden boy, and he's standing up there like a statue. He's holding grain, and he's holding a torch in his hand. The golden boy was created in France in 1918, and his arrival in Winnipeg was delayed due to World War I. So the golden boy was a statue that was made in France, in Europe, and brought across the ocean on a ship and placed at the top of the legislature long ago. Mary and Boo swish and swoosh over to the Forks Market, located at the junction of the Red and Assiniboine rivers. There are lots of fun things to do at the Forks all year round, Boo informs Mary. Now, if you've taken a close look at that map I showed you yesterday about Winnipeg and found where Westwood was, it is close to the Assiniboine River. The Assiniboine River and the Red River join in Winnipeg. They meet, and the place where they meet got the nickname the Forks. It has been a very important place in Manitoba's history because it has been a meeting place for many, many years. Since before there was streets and roads, people used to travel on the rivers, and to travel together to meet up, they would meet at the Forks where the two rivers come together. The Forks is a National Historic Site of Canada. It was an Aboriginal meeting place, and over time various groups of people have passed through and settled here. Located across from the Red River, the Forks is St. Boniface. Across from the Forks is St. Boniface, the largest Francophone community in Western Canada. So many of those people that came from Europe long ago came from France, and so there's a French community that is part of Winnipeg, and it's located close to the Forks where those rivers meet. The tricky north wind is pestering pedestrians on Portage and Main, Winnipeg's windiest corner. He flaps the flags on the flagpoles. He gusts Granny's grocery out of her hands. He even picks up Pudgy Puppy and floats it along like a kite. What have you done with the golden boy's torch? Boo demands. The north wind howls with laughter. I blew it in the Red River. If you want to find it, follow the current. And then the north wind disappeared. Mischief in the middle. Winnipeg is Manitoba's capital city. In Cree, Winnipeg means muddy water. So I think long ago that river, people said it was a muddy river, and that's how we got our name Winnipeg, which means muddy water. Mary and Boo flip and fly along the Red River until it flows all the way to Lake Winnipeg, Manitoba's largest lake. Lake Winnipeg, Lake Manitoba, and Lake Winnipegosis are Manitoba's three largest lakes. They are remnants of a glacial lake called Lake Agassiz, an ancient lake that once covered much of the province. Back in dinosaur times, most of Manitoba was covered by a lake. All water in Manitoba eventually flows north into the Hudson Bay because of the slope of the land. Mary frowns. I'm sure the water put the torch out. How are we ever going to find it? There are more than 100,000 lakes in Manitoba. Most of them are small and located in the northern part of the province. One of these northern Manitoba lakes, Pekawatchimanacosa-Wekapanawik, has the longest geographical place name in Canada. That's a big name for a little lake. The north wind returns, whisking away the waves into frothy, ferocious peaks. With an extra strong whoosh, he sweeps Mary off Boo's back and she tumbles into the choppy water below. Mary is sloshed around like juice in a blender. Something slippery brushes her icy toes. An enormous sturgeon with nose plugs, remember I told you this is make-believe, with nose plugs jumps out of the water and helps Mary to shore. What's a little girl doing in Lake Winnipeg? Asked the sturgeon. What's a fish doing with nose plugs? Asked Mary. The sturgeon grins. It just so happens I don't like getting water up my nose. Well, it just so happens that we're looking for the Golden Boy's torch, states Boo. He snuggles up to Mary, and his thick brown fur quickly warms her and dries off her atlas. I saw a torch floating north, the sturgeon says. They thank him and wave goodbye. So they're traveling north, remember that. It's going to help you when you go to make your map. Mary and Boo sail and swoop over Lake Winnipeg until they reach the Nelson River. I've never seen so many pine trees, says Boo. Where are we? Always particularly practical, Mary looks at her atlas. We're in the boreal forest. What's that? Asked Boo. Overhead, an owl, the great gray variety, clears her throat and fluffs up her plumage. That's her feathers. A boreal forest has mainly coniferous trees. Coniferous, they both ask. The great gray adjusts her horn-rimmed glasses. Coniferous trees are trees with cones. Just remember, C is for coniferous and C is for cones. Thanks for the info, replies Mary, but we're looking for a torch. Oh, I saw a torch floating downstream, the owl hoots, and they thank her and wave goodbye. They dipsy-doodle north down the Nelson River, and they see huge hydroelectric dams. Generating stations capture the energy of fast-moving water and turn it into electricity, so power lines and turn into Sorry, I have to go back and reread it. Someone came to the door. Generating stations capture the energy of fast-moving water and turn it into electricity so power lines can carry it to homes, schools, and businesses. It is getting colder and colder, and the trees are getting smaller and smaller. I learned in Bison School that you go farther north. I learned in Bison School that as you go farther north, the trees look like little sticks, and the ground stays permanently frozen. It's called permafrost. Boo is a Gold Star student. So there's not many trees with leaves, and the trees start to get smaller and smaller as you go farther north. Mary observes, the trees only have branches on one side. I wonder if the tricky north wind did that. He did, the little stick trees call out. He blows so hard that our branches can only grow on the south side of our trees. Mary and Boo giggle and wave. Trees that talk. And this is actually a real fact too, is that up north there are some trees, not far, far north, but the farther you go, the spindlier the trees get. And at one point, the trees only have branches on one side because it's so windy from the north that they don't grow their branches on the other side. They see the gigantic Hudson Bay stretching out in front of them. Mary and Boo hear clicking noises. They hear squealing noises. The noises get nearer and nearer and clearer until they see a group of bright white beluga whales playing in the water. Welcome to Hudson Bay, the whales click and squeak. Mary and Boo flit and flitter over the belugas, enjoying their funny whale talk. Mary notices the steadily sinking sun. It's getting dark. They're getting closer to nighttime. This has been a long traveling day. They wave goodbye and fly back to shore. Up ahead, something glitters in the sun's fading rays. It's the torch, cries Mary. Polar bears found it. Be careful, Boo whispers. We can't bother a mother bear with cubs. Mary and Boo silently swirl towards the torch, but the polar bears spot them. Snarling, the mother bear swats them to the ground and lunges, her sharp teeth bared. Mary feels the bear's hot breath on her face and squeezes her eyes shut. Now Mary and Boo are very far north. They're about as far north as you can go in Manitoba, and that is where you would find polar bears living up by Hudson Bay. I'm going to show you on the map in a minute. Suddenly, the north wind bursts in, carrying Mary, Boo, and the torch safely away from those grouchy bears. We found the torch, North Wind whoops. Sorry, I read that wrong. You found the torch, the north wind whoops. Thanks for rescuing us, said Mary, but you have some explaining to do, Mr. Wind. Why did you knock me into Lake Winnipeg? Oh, Sorry, the North Wind apologizes. I was just goofing around. Sheesh, now I know how my brother feels when I tease him, mumbles Mary. We need to hurry, says Boo. The sun is setting. Dismayed, Mary considers the drenched torch. How are we ever going to light it? Look up, says the North Wind. The northern lights are dancing in the sky. They whirl around the torch until magically its flame returns. The North Wind hands Mary the torch. Let's get this torch back to the Golden Boy, Boo exclaims. They wave goodbye to the northern lights. The North Wind zips and zooms, and Mary and Boo all the way back to Winnipeg. The Golden Boy is so pleased that he dances a jig on the dome of the legislative building. He proudly faces north again, holding his torch and his sheaf of wheat, the symbols of Manitoba's strong future. The North Wind puffs a goodbye and disappears. Mary pats Boo's furry head. I better go home. Come visit again, says Boo. Mary taps her atlas, tap, 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 and opens it to the page where she lives. The atlas fizzles and sizzles, it splutters and splatters, it bubbles and pops. Mary grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and taller and taller and taller, and larger, and in a flurry of sparks and mist, she's back in her bedroom. Mary hears her brother in the hallway. I guess I better go apologize, she mutters. Then she spots her box of fake spiders. Now that might be interesting. Then Mary smiles. Mary's adventures across Manitoba. Mary traveled all through Manitoba, from the southernmost part of Manitoba, where there's farmers' fields and grain, all the way up through the boreal forest past the lakes and to the northern tip of Manitoba, up by Hudson Bay with the polar bears. We are going to go and draw some of the things Mary saw along the way on our outline map of Manitoba. Check the next video and follow along as you can draw what I drew to make your map of Manitoba. Have more details. Bye. Thanks for listening.